know you're having lunch, which is fine. But if you feel the music, if you feel like dancing, you want to get up and move, do not hesitate. I'm here to motivate, but also to engage you. I'm going to do a variety of Latino rhythms, bolero, cha-cha-cha, cumbia, salsa, and merengue. So if you feel like moving, and then, si hay latinos aquí también, por favor, si sienten la música, deben de bailar así, ¿sí o no? Ok, muy bien. Ok.
So last year, at this same event, I was speaking on placemaking through the work we do through hip hop culture with All the Above Hip Hop Academy. And it was at this event in these hallways that somebody said, hey, there's an impact grant through the city for $75,000. And my initial response was, that's cool, we'll figure out somebody to get it. I know a couple artists. And then as I sat with Dustin, we're like, hey, you know all this talk we've been like trying to occupy all this blank space in Lansing? Hey, this grant might be able to help us facilitate doing that. So we sat down, started talking about what it would look like if we had a $75,000 grant to bring world-class artwork to Lansing to help celebrate life below the stacks. And shoot, 1 year later, here we are. For the last 10 years, we've been talking about how do we make sense of all these blank walls we have in Lansing, you know? And there was the golden opportunity, you know? Okay, so here, my philosophy on placemaking is that the place is already made, the people are there, you're not really creating a place, you're activating what's already there and adding ingredients to it, you know what I mean? So for us, the idea that there's life already happening here in our city, it just needs to be, celebrated, or put on display. And there's people who have been working these communities already. They have been activating that space for a long time. Now we just celebrate it and put it on a pedestal through mural art, through pop-up events, through whatever. I think placemaking needs to be a collaboration between the land, the space, the people there already, the new ideas. It's a combination or a perfect marriage between what is and what can be. You know what I'm saying? But it has to respect what already is. And to me, that's placemaking done well.
For me, I'm thinking about the places that I've lived. I've lived in Minneapolis, I've lived in Portland, Oregon, and living in those cities, it's very visible that placemaking it's embedded into the city planning. You're out and about, and you feel certain ways about areas based on the creative nature of that place. So coming back to Michigan and coming back to Lansing specifically, and just our relationship and talking about street art essentially and graffiti and hip hop, it only made sense for us to place make in Lansing essentially, to activate spaces that they're looked over, and they're public, they're very public, and they're just they're sitting there without really being acknowledged. So it's acknowledging your surroundings in a way that activates them, and brings about pride in that community, pride, excitement, gathering points. So all that is placemaking.
Yeah, I think as long as people are at the forefront, they're at the core of the decision making, whether that's development, housing, art, amenities, coffee shops, beyond business and beyond economic support. We think about economic stability. We think about people. It's art for people's sake, development for people's sake, urban development for people's sake. You know what I'm saying? That has to be the core of it. I think you see gross representations of, for the sake of business or the economy, people getting trampled over all over the country. You know what I'm saying? At the expense of locals who have been there for a long time, all of a sudden having to relocate or move or get pushed out or pushed into homelessness for the first time. I see it, my state or where I'm from, Seattle, is people experiencing homelessness for the first time unrelated to addiction. just because they can no longer afford to live in their home. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what happens when it becomes less about the people, especially the people who have been there, cultivating the soil and building in that community, when it becomes a lot more about future development or economic development and less about that. That's where we do it wrong. But I think Lansing's in a unique space right now to where we can learn from other cities what they've done right, what they've done wrong, and keep people at the forefront and at the focal point of our development and growth and our and all the cool things happening. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard to go wrong when you do that. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to go wrong when you do that. And I think Lansing will always be a place where people relocate to and people just stop by in passing. You know, it's always going to be a part of our identity. Most cities are like that. You know, we're a mid-sized city. And so what we do is we celebrate those who are here, those who have been here. And we also rethink how to activate spaces that ultimately contribute to the quality of life that people, regardless of where they are in their journey, can appreciate and value. You know what I mean? I have a hard time with saying we want to make this place a destination location. It's been a destination location for some people. You know what I'm saying?
People live here.
People live here. Like they
live here.
There is a destination. Maybe it's not a destination because there's a huge company you're coming to work for, but it's certainly a destination. People escaping, war-torn situations in their community. You know, it's a destination location, and those stories and those narratives need to be valued just as much as the people who are relocating here for some kind of like economic advantage or like a business that they could be a part of, or an artist loft they want to live in. You know what I'm saying? All that stuff is cool, but that should never be, we should never look at those as the goal. I think it always should be about the people and supporting, acknowledging, championing, and really highlighting that, because there's a lot of people who have made this place a destination location, and it's about now telling their story, you know, because their situation here is a lot better than their situation from where they were coming from. And to not acknowledge that, I think is doing a disservice to the greater narrative of our community, because this is a beautiful place to be, whether you're passing through or you're relocating, you know what I'm saying? Or resettling, for sure.
Good afternoon. Oh, it is great to see so many friendly, smiling faces this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris Sell, and I have the great fortune to introduce some accomplished experts here talking about retaining and attracting talent as it relates to place and placemaking. Candidly, admittedly, I don't know how I was allowed into the building and onto the stage with our esteemed guests that we have here this afternoon. And so rest assured, you're not here to hear from me mostly. You're here to listen to some regional experts from across the state of Michigan who will be sharing insights and perspectives as it relates to our topic today. I am in a position at Michigan State University. I lead alumni engagement for our student entrepreneurship program at MSU. And I did grow up in the area in Williamson, just down the road. Go Hornets, if there's any Williamson Hornets in the room. But admittedly, about 6-7 years ago, I found myself, having been away from the region for almost a decade, living and working here, and selfishly, as a mid-20-somethings person, I wanted to connect to my community. And having spent the better part of a decade in higher education, as a career educator, as someone that works helping employers recruit interns or students, recruiting talent for jobs and career opportunities, and helping students find jobs, I started to ask the question, how are we as a community collectively welcoming that particular audience to Lansing and to all of our neighborhoods and communities? And I found out that there was more to potentially be done. And as you know, many of you, one of the beautiful things about Lansing is that there's something that you want to do, a need that you think could be met, you can oftentimes do it. And just over 4 years ago, what started in 2016 as a pilot summer event series has now turned into a nonprofit organization that annually welcomes 2,500 emerging professionals to our community. And we do really unique things like fashion shows at airport hangars, or taking over a blighted building and having an entrepreneurship expo with a robot petting zoo, or perhaps it's putting a 300-foot zip line in the air and giving participants a real aerial view of our city with rooftop public spaces. Or perhaps it's a 1.5-mile stretch of the riverfront, which I know we'll talk about riverfronts here in a moment as well, and in allowing people in our community to enjoy a community gem and all the things that come with it. And so, although I'm not an expert like my colleagues here to the right of me, surely am thrilled to be a part of this conversation because I will undoubtedly learn a lot today. So thank you all for being here. What I'd like to do next is just allow each of our panelists this afternoon to introduce themselves, talk about just briefly where they work, what they do, and kind of their experience as it relates to creative placemaking. Mark, could you kind of start things off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Pasco. I'm the Director of Communications at the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. And we're a nonprofit organization, not to give you the whole elevator speech, but the short version of it. We are a nonprofit organization. We launched in 2003. Our launching partners were the Kresge Foundation, the City of Detroit, and General Motors. Our vision then and our vision now is to revitalize 5.5 miles of riverfront from bridge to bridge in downtown Detroit. The bridge to Canada, the Ambassador Bridge, and the bridge to Belle Isle, the MacArthur Bridge. So that's 5.5 miles. Detroit's riverfront used to be very industrial, and over the years it became kind of a not so great place to visit and not so safe place to visit. Our mission is to revitalize that 5.5 miles with parks, plazas, pavilions, and green space, and slowly but surely make those weeded lots and abandoned buildings and things like that go away and create spaces where people can come and enjoy themselves.
Thank you, Mark. I'll give you some claps.
Good afternoon, everybody.
It is.
Perfect. So Kathleen Edgerly, the new Executive Director of Downtown Lansing, Inc. I've been here for about 4 weeks in my professional role, but I have been born and raised in Lansing my whole life, so it's good to be back working in my hometown. When I was asked to speak on this panel, I actually was working as the Executive Director in downtown Howell for their Main Street program in DEA, where we were named in 2018 the Great American Main Street Award winner, top downtown in the U.S., so super exciting. And it was awesome to be a part of that, but now being back here in downtown Lansing and just working with so many wonderfully passionate and energized people to positively position and promote downtown as the place where you want to live, work, invest, spend your time, and make sure people are aware of all the awesome opportunities that exist here in downtown Lansing. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Mathis. I am a professional motivational speaker for 12 years, best-selling author, business coach. I'm like a serial entrepreneur, like my hands are in everything. Anything creative, I want to be a part of it. And so and I'm also the owner of a new experience in Grand Rapids called Raise a Glass Wine Tours, which is the only city-style wine tour experience in the state of Michigan, third in the country of its kind. And so I'm all about testing out new things, trying new ideas, trying new stuff, and having fun with it. And this opportunity for me came up because I'm also part of the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce. They have an initiative called the Creative Chambers. And so I serve on that council. And I've been on that council for about a year and a half or so now. And it's all about how do we make Grand Rapids, Lansing, Kalamazoo, etc., cities that are friendly for creatives, where we can give you a space where you can thrive, grow your businesses, build family, relationships, etc. And so up to this point, I would say in the last few years, it has not been that way. And it has not been a place where a photographer can really build a full-time business because the major companies in our areas send the business to LA or to New York or to Chicago. And so a part of my role, I've been very, very fortunate to have success in this space as a creative, but it's allowed me to be a part of the room, in the room, where I can fight on your behalf and say, this is why you do business in our community. There is talent right in our community that can create the exact same work, if not better work, than sending it all the way to another city and paying tens of thousands of dollars more than what you can do right here in our local community. So it's really helping you drive that and being a mouthpiece for creatives in our community.
I'm Jennifer Jelinek. I'm not from Michigan, so I came here less than 2 years ago, actually, to Kalamazoo from New York City, and there I work for the City of New York, directing their Business Improvement District program. So the city essentially coordinates organizations like We are now the Kalamazoo Downtown Partnership, or Grand Rapids Inc., or Lansing Incorporated, Downtown Lansing Incorporated. So the city coordinates those organizations, collects annual data from them, oversees them, sits on the boards. So that's essentially what I did, and there are 75 of those organizations in New York. So now I get to see the other side of it, both being not in New York City and in a city in the Midwest, but also working on behalf of the organization. So I'm Vice President of Kalamazoo Downtown Partnership, and we are, I always like to say when we're in the community, we are the placemaking organization for downtown Kalamazoo, to help distinguish what we do from some of the work of our partners who are also involved in the economic development space. So I like to say that we are focused on 4 areas of impact. That's people, place, experience, and growth. And all of that sort of falls under this umbrella of placemaking and making downtown Kalamazoo a place where people want to, as it is so often said, live, work, and play. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. So just last week, if I'm not mistaken, we had the good fortune of talking on the phone a little bit, talking about today's conversation. And one of the, 30 minutes in, we were talking about all the great things we're going to talk about today. And I think it was Mark that kind of circled back with us and said, maybe we should really start with just asking the question of each of us, what does placemaking mean to us? Because we recognize that it might mean something different to each one of us. I know earlier today at our session with June Lee, we had the great fortune to hear from her, and she was talking about how creative placemaking equates to the act of people coming together to change overlooked and undervalued places, into welcoming public places. But I'd like to ask the question of each of you, if you wouldn't mind, each of you kind of just spending a little bit of time talking about placemaking, what that means to you, and then also how it relates to the organization for which you work. Mark, take it away.
Thank you. Placemaking, I think if you ask 10 different people their definition of placemaking, I think you'll get 10 different answers. Placemaking to me is creating and curating a public space that promotes people wanting to go there, hang out, and come back again. And along the riverfront, we have, when we're complete, we're going to have 5.5 miles. We're not complete just yet, but we have a lot of different public spaces, and each one has its own identity. There's like the chill park. There's the park with all the kids. There's the park where a little bit the older crowd likes to kind of hang out. So I think the different public spaces mean different things to different people, but if you can create a public space with its own identity and program it and let it become a living, breathing document, or living, breathing entity, I should say, to me, that's placemaking. And you could have the best place in the world that has the prettiest flowers and the most programming and things like that, but if people don't feel welcome, if they don't feel inclusive, I don't think it becomes successful. So I think placemaking is creating inclusive public spaces for people to enjoy.
And if I can build on that, to me, it can be summarized in 2 words. It's about community and connectivity. Because if we are enhancing, whether it's the built environment, whether it is a social culture, and bringing a whole group of leaders together, artists, residents, property owners, city leaders, etc., and creating these spaces and these experiences, we're not involving the community, are we even doing it right?
I'll add on to that and say, I would say for me, in looking at the work that we do in Grand Rapids, a big part of it is all-inclusiveness. Like you spoke to as well, creating a space that's all-inclusive. I mean, one of our challenges that we've had is we have tons of creatives around our area, but when you visit downtown Grand Rapids, it has not been creative friendly. When you look at the cost to park, when you look at all the big business, when you look at the cost to do things, to visit those places, it's very expensive. And so one of our challenges became is how do we now encourage others to want to come into this space and feel comfortable being in this space and not feeling like they don't belong because they didn't come in a suit and tie. Because they're creative and they just wear jeans and a t-shirt. That's how they make films every day, right? So we want to create a place where everyone feels comfortable being in that space and it's affordable in a way that the business can still win, but those visiting can still afford to be there as well.
And to build on all of that, I think one of the things that I was thinking about as I was thinking about this question was the idea that placemaking is really meant to enhance the assets of community. So that the assets that already exist and that are there, and it's really just about highlighting those, brightening them up a bit, and instead not trying to take a cookie cutter replicative approach, I think, to placemaking. And so I think each community, each district has a little bit of a different flavor. So how do you enhance that? How do you call that out? How do you make everyone see the uniqueness, the interesting character of that area? So to add to that, and I was also thinking of kind of the scope. I think we often think about placemaking as public space and infrastructure related, and I definitely think that's the good core of it. But I think there are also other elements that we do as an organization that I still like to consider placemaking. So, thinking about the types of businesses you're bringing in, the topic of inclusivity, I think it really does broaden out just from a public space and infrastructure perspective.
So that's a great point, Jennifer. I was actually maybe I'll start with you, but one of the other things that's been running through my head when we think about placemaking, as it pertains to the organizations through which you work. I mean, you all represent different organizations, not just regionally, but they have a different mission and vision from one to the next. With respect to your work in Kalamazoo, Southwest Michigan, can you talk a little bit more about creative placemaking initiatives, specifically the organization touches, impacts, supports, sponsors, and kind of what the ramifications of that are in Kalamazoo?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, for the Kalamazoo Downtown Partnership, we just changed our name. It's been a very interesting year. We've also restructured both financially and organizationally. So we went through the process of actually creating, similar to our counterparts I know in Grand Rapids and probably others in the state and country, but we created 4 new leadership coalitions. So we're calling them citizen coalitions, and the idea was to create a broad range for citizen input aligned with our areas of impact. So before I mentioned people, place, experience, and growth. And so I think placemaking sometimes in the sense that you immediately think of it as is the place. So this is the built environment, how we're creating the built environment downtown, but then there's also the idea of people. So we're trying to bring this topic of inclusivity proactively, addressing it specifically. Who doesn't feel welcome? Why don't they feel welcome? How do we address that through various measures? And what we're finding is across the board, there's a lot of interaction between each of those 4 areas. So both in the sense of inclusivity and place, so there's topics of accessibility and actual infrastructure, and then there's topics of experience. So when you're holding events, who is it marketed to? Who feels comfortable attending, who can afford to attend, and then in the area of growth, which is more, I think, business retention and support focused, who are you bringing in terms of businesses? Do you have business owners that are diverse and represent different populations? So it's very interesting. We're finding all of these things really overlap and are interconnected with one another. So that's been a really interesting piece of that. So I think I can talk a little bit more about specific projects, but for us it's been in many ways a sort of a pivotal year. And so I think some of this we're figuring out, and we're really trying to do that with the strong input from the community and different voices represented on our leadership coalitions.
Sure, that makes sense. Chris, I'm wondering too, Grand Rapids, Jennifer mentioned Grand Rapids, other communities might have comparable aspirations or initiatives. From your lens, could you speak to kind of creative placemaking initiatives that maybe the Grand Rapids Chamber has been a part of, or that the Creative Council has been spearheading, and kind of what that's looked like within the lens of your region?
Absolutely, yeah. So a part of our role is really to hold the chamber accountable to what they say they're going to do. So if you're saying you're going to create these opportunities for creatives in the community, we need to see that. And so our council is made up of all creatives, from film to photography to web design to me as an author to dance. I mean, you name it. It's just a collaborative group of us. And so some of the things that we've done, we've held a few mixers things of that nature to kind of get creatives involved and get them into the downtown community. I would say one of the biggest things that they did early on, probably the last couple of years, is they renovated the actual chamber itself. And so originally, our Chamber of Commerce was all about, you walk in, you stop at the front desk, and it's all offices that are held by the staff of the chamber. Now when you walk in, it's been revamped, it's been redone. So the entire downstairs is now an open setting for creatives and other business professionals to come in and work. And all of their offices are upstairs in a very small cubicle style area. And so they've taken it where they've made 75–80% of the space is now to the people rather than it being the other way around. And so that was probably one of the biggest projects that we've seen, and was a step in the right direction, because again, we want to create a space where creatives feel comfortable being downtown. They feel comfortable being in these spaces and working. I would add to that, another one of the additions that we've also done is we've gotten some of the bigger companies to jump on board and agree to contract their work out to local creatives in our community. So they have a submission process where they will, post, this job posting, and this is what we're looking for as a videographer. Our budget is $50,000, and we need to create this, this, and this. And those creatives that are a part of this free council, or they have a sector of the chamber that they created that's free for the first year for new creatives. And so those that are members of that have the opportunity to submit and apply for those jobs with companies that they otherwise would never have had access to. Because relationships are not big enough. I mean, a number of reasons, right, that we deal with as creatives as to why we don't get in certain spaces. And so we have worked as a team, as a collaborative along with the chamber to kind of eliminate that divide and give them direct access to apply for those same opportunities that these larger companies have.
Excellent. So we're going to get to the talent part of this conversation in a second, but I want to just make sure that we kind of see through kind of what placemaking means to us and talking about that from your different respective regions. I'm wondering about how have you seen, maybe this is a question for both Kathleen and Mark to kind of tackle initially, how have you seen creative placemaking benefit the economic prosperity of your respective regions or your communities, right? So when you're thinking about initiatives that are meant devoted to place, how is the community and the economics of that community lifted when an initiative that's successful actually takes place?
If your group and whoever's involved with the placemaking is very strategic and looking long-term for these placemaking projects and what you're hoping to achieve, are you doing a project that purposely is done in an area that's pretty vacant or not getting a lot of traffic or attention from developers, things of that nature? Or you're putting something in a space to reimagine that space and really boost its retail presence, or trying something that's completely new and maybe a little risky, whether it's risky in other communities or just risky in yours. And you're, for instance, like you're putting a rollout pop-up park space in front of a building that's been vacant for 10 years and bringing people to it, putting lighting, putting this green space, putting some seating out there and saying, hey, there's an opportunity here. Or you're bringing a bunch of food trucks or vans or something to a vacant parking lot that's been standing there for 10, 20 plus years and saying, this could be something else. And we could have a lot of activity happening here, making those spaces flexible for that long-term projection. Then you're looking at those long-term results and what you hope to achieve collectively together, where you could be seeing 5, 10 years down the line, prime development happening at those sites. Or maybe you're talking with your business owners and property owners and they're coming to you a couple years later and saying, we weren't able to fill our buildings until you brought this activity to our block that normally didn't get a lot of attention, and now we're at full capacity. That's then having those real economic development as well as talent retention conversations about the effect and impact that placemaking can have.
Absolutely.
When I think of the Detroit riverfront, what it was and what it is now, our placemaking efforts, I think, have reaped tremendous rewards. Before, there were abandoned buildings and silos and not a lot of business or people coming down there. But now, through the parks that we created and the steps that we've taken to kind of connect them and create placemaking spots between them, you see a lot more people coming down, and those people pay to park, and they eat, and they go have drinks, and they rent bikes and things like that. And it's also, those additional people coming down have also helped us broaden our horizons and offerings in terms of special events. in programs. So now we have a free literacy program for kids. We have senior walking programs. We have programs for singles, programs for active people. And all those factors coming together and bringing people down to the riverfront. The first 10 years of our existence, $1 billion has been spent in the riverfront revitalization, and the experts are predicting that over the next 10 years, another $1 billion is going to be spent. So all those placemaking initiatives and endeavors are finally starting to pay off. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see new apartment complexes popping up, and a new flower shop, and a new coffee shop, and a new brewery, and things like that happening along the riverfront.
So you can actually see that prosperity visualized, come to life.
Comes to life. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but if you're patient and you have the right vision and the right people with the right passion in place, it comes.
Absolutely. So this is the question I have for all four of you, and this is where it gets real fun. I think about, even to my experience as a young professional, I graduated from Michigan State. Go Green!
Go like
Love it. Clearly in a room with a lot of other Spartans. But I remember in 2010, and I was getting asked to go to some event in Detroit, Live Work Detroit, it was called at the time. And I remember my mind being blown, seeing Avalon Bakery in Midtown. And of course now my sister lives and works there at the Detroit Medical Center. It was my first experience literally walking around in a community that I had known nothing about. In fact, had probably been told lots of things that weren't really true growing up as part of that generation. And I remember there was data around that time that was showing that more than one of every 2 college graduates, or any type of graduate with post-secondary training, was taking or moving to a community and taking that into consideration before the job, right? And in many cases, they're going and moving to a community without a job because they just really wanted to be in Seattle, or they just really wanted to live in Chicago or San Francisco or wherever it might be. And so I think it really kind of illustrated this paradigm shift where for generations, jobs were kind of the first degree and only degree that we thought about where we're going to live and work. Well, I need a job, and I'm going to go where the job is, and that in many cases will kind of inform where I'm going to live and work. But now we came to this point where talent, quote unquote, was mobile, and to the point where they're going to go where they want to go, and jobs will follow. And we see that at a national scale, right? Even thinking about Amazon's newest headquarters and thinking about the companies going where talent is. And so it's kind of this reversal. And so I'm wondering, what do places need to have to be appealing to talent? Because I don't know. And I should know, I probably should know. Organization is striving to solve that. But I would love to hear each of your thoughts and feedback about what do places really ought to have to be appealing to talent, so that someone, a talented person, whether 17 years old or 57 years old, says, I want to go to that place and live and work because that's a really cool place. What do places need to be appealing to talent?
I think great cities need to have great public places. And using Detroit as an example, Detroit has a handful of great public spaces where people from all walks of life will come and hang out, and it's fun to go places where you're going to see someone who doesn't look like you. No one wants to go someplace where you're going to see people who look exactly like you and think like you and things like that. So for a city to be great, I think you have to have great public spaces where people will come. And if you have a city that's vibrant and happening and people are coming and spending time there, I think that's going to make people want to stay. I mean, you're not going to want to leave a city that has a symphony and great parks and great places to eat and drink and concerts and things like that. Years ago, and again, I'm just talking about Detroit, it was easy for kids to graduate and say, I'm going to Chicago, or I'm going to New York, or I'm going to someplace else that was more happening and fun and vibrant. Now that's changing finally, and that's because there's public spaces, and there's more people moving downtown, and there's more bars opening, and more restaurants opening, and more cultural opportunities. So again, to short summary of it, I think great places, great cities need great public places.
And I'd say be your authentic self. Embrace who you are, whether it's as a neighborhood, as a downtown, as a city, etc. And look at those assets, those existing attractions, again, the built environment or your cultural, social environment, and enhance them. Figure out your passionate people, as well as your planners, and really embrace who you are, and then continue to build on it. I used to say when I first started in Howell, there was this weird divide between Howell and Brighton and who is better, and I know here in Lansing I've already heard it as well. We'll be like, we need to do this like this city, or we need to do this more like this, or we want to make sure we are the next Ann Arbor, et cetera. It's like, no, we want to be who we are as a community and be it so well that everybody else wants to be us and they want to live here. So, right? Like, I love Lansing. And that's what people are going to buy into and follow. So just be who you are, loud and proud, and it's going to just continue to attract more and more people, places, and everything.
That's good. It's a tough follow-up. I would say, I've had a chance to travel all over the country, and things that I've learned through the journeys, and even in my own city and other places I've visited that really work, that attract talent, is diversity is one. I think we're in a place now where, for me, I'm at the tail end of being a millennial, and one thing that works for us is to be in a space where we can meet new people, make new friends, have new conversations with people we've never met, don't know anything about, have nothing in common with. And that's where things blossom and grow from there. And I would think the second thing that I've seen that has worked out really well for us in Grand Rapids is relationships. A place where I can go and build relationships. I mean, you cannot be a small business owner in Grand Rapids and have a customer walk in and they only work with the worker or the employee at the front desk. They're going to ask about your family. They're going to ask who owns the place, who is your sister, do you know this? I mean, it's all about relationships in our city, and that is a huge part, I think, of what helps us to thrive. I'll add one more thing to that. Bing Goey is a business owner in Grand Rapids. He owns the Goey Center, he owns Eastern Floral, and he's involved in a number of projects and as far as hiring talent and bringing in talent. And I saw him speak at an event once, and one of the quotes that he said was that, I've done work all over the world, and I've never been to a place anything like Grand Rapids. Because when I go to California and I do business, you walk in, I give you cash, you give me a product or a service, we shake hands, and I leave. Except Grand Rapids. When you come into a business in Grand Rapids and you try to exchange cash, the first thing they do is they ask about your family. They want to build a relationship. They want to know your first name. They want to get to know you. Those things are crucial to the success as a creative. Because a big part of your business is going to be built off of relationships and referrals and connecting with good people who have the ability to help you get into certain rooms. So we've just grown into a society where it's really not all about what you know anymore. It's really about who you know and who you can connect with and how you can not only build strong, solid, genuine relationships, but then how do you leverage those relationships to help you further your career while at the same time helping that person further theirs. So that would be my 2 cents, is really those 2 components.
I would have to agree with everything said here, and I think to just add to, I think, these kind of key elements. I always think jobs and opportunity, jobs of all shapes and sizes, and education levels, jobs and opportunity are key, and I think there's research and opinions on that topic. Do people follow jobs? Do jobs follow people? I think recently it's been the conversation that we think jobs are following people, but I think thinking about that as you're creating a place and what are the opportunities here is important, and they're at least interconnected. And then I would also say looking at quality of life. So what does that mean? We have a lot of good information. I'm going to make a plug. Years ago I read a book called Happy City by Charles Montgomery, and I really enjoyed it. But essentially, what are the principles that contribute to quality of life that research is demonstrating, right? So walkability, short commutes, I forget what public spaces, so green space, interaction of green space. So what are the elements of a city and how we're mapping out cities and planning cities and putting them together now that incorporate these kind of key principles or elements that we know impact quality of life and people's happiness on a day-to-day basis? Are we doing that research? Are we listening to that research? And are we incorporated in the decisions that we're making today? So that's the 4th piece that I would add to that.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So I'm wondering, you talked about kind of what
communities need, what type of place we need that's appealing to talent, what do we erroneously think needs to be in a place to attract and retain talent? In other words, are there myths out there that, oh, if we only had this, or if we could only have this, or if we only do that, that would actually move the needle. And now we would become this really welcoming, top destination place for talent. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, no, that's not it, actually. Has that ever come to the forefront of your mind, or where you're thinking, after years of experience, I think people thought that we needed to have this or do this, and now I know, whether other people agree with me or not, that that's actually not the secret sauce to become a great place for talent. I see some nodding, so I know that you're thinking of examples.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kathleen said it best, and I'm not going to say it as well as she did, kind of know who you are and own it. Don't try to be who you're not. I mean, we're the Detroit Riverfront. We're urban and gritty and cement and concrete and brick buildings, and the Quinder Cut is a greenway, a former railway that is now a pedestrian greenway. And it's gritty and urban and cool, and just don't try to be New York, or don't try to be Chicago, or don't try to be Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids or Lansing. Be yourself, be your own city, embrace it, and own it, and figure out what makes your community unique, and build off of that. And the other part to that is know your community as well. I think one thing that's really important is to know your community and ask questions and engage with your community members in any way that you possibly can, as many times as you can. Because if you don't have the community in your corner, the people who live and work in your community, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And opening up that conversation and helping people realize who they can go to have those conversations, or to start moving that needle, if you will, to look at spaces differently, to come up with new ideas, and just really cultivating that culture of inclusivity and acceptance of new ideas and new people and new energy. And God forbid, don't say, we've already done that before, or we tried this 10 years ago and it didn't work, because that's going to then turn other people off, or maybe some of that new talent or your new residents who are moving in off before they even get started.
What was the question one more time?
What do you think we erroneously think communities or places need to have to be appealing to talent? So something like this mantra out there, if we only could do this or have that, that would really help us solve that problem.
One that I hear often is money. Money comes up a lot. And a lot of even creatives think that if I could only get access to the capital, I could do this or do that. And even at the city level, in some of these meetings, they think money is the answer. When I don't think money is the answer. I think on the creative side, have a really, really amazing service or product that people can't deny. It doesn't take money for that. It just takes a lot of creativity and really being willing to do the work. As simple as that. And then on the city side, same thing. Be willing to do the work that says, this is why we're the top dog in this space. This is why we're a key player in this space. It doesn't necessarily take money to do those things. That's just getting a good group of people who are really committed to the cause and really willing to drive it out and do the work. And when you bring those things together, the money will follow. When you create the demand for it, the money will show up when needed. But it doesn't take the money to make those things happen. Sometimes when you throw the money in, the money only complicates it even more. And then it attracts the wrong kind of people to the table when they know there's money there. So if you get the good group who's willing to just simply do the work first and have a true passion to serve, the money will follow along with the right people, and you'll have a city that grows.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think it's, again, that idea of like a cookie cutter approach, right? That's the only thing erroneous. So I would almost say, there's so little that is actually erroneous, right? We should be trying it all. We should be experimenting. I think the places where we get into trouble, are where we start to say, this is the way you do it within this box, right? So if we don't allow communities and places and community members to experiment with new ideas and approaches, that's the erroneous piece of that. I mean, we're not allowing a space to participate sort of in its own evolution.
That makes sense. Now, I know we want to reserve some time for some Q&A from our audience, but there is at least one other question I want to ask each of you that's kind of pressing. You respect, each of you represent a different region across this beautiful state of Michigan. And so I'm wondering, what are communities in Michigan not doing, but should be doing in the way of creative placemaking to attract and retain talent?
Oh, that's a good one. I can kick that one off real easy.
I like it.
Man,
Go for it.
Getting creatives in the room.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the biggest thing. We have to have creatives in the room to make decisions and have discussion around what does it mean to be a creative and how to move things forward for creative. The last thing we need in the room are the big business people who are 60 plus, and no disrespect, but they're 60 plus year olds who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, making all the decisions for a base of community that they have no understanding of. We need to, I mean, it's cool to have you in here, but we need some of you guys. We do. Thank you. We've got to get you some of you creators at the table and having that conversation and telling us this is what's happening in the areas that you visit. Because the reality of it is, some of us simply don't know for numerous reasons, right? Whether it's age, race, gender, cultural differences. I'm not in all those same spaces, so I don't have an understanding of what happens in the photography space and how they're siloed and how photographers don't collaborate for whatever reason. We need you at the table to tell us some of those challenges and help us better understand as to how we can help you overcome those things, because we don't have all the answers.
And to add to that a little bit, because it's a great point, we all have our unique skill sets, definitely our own opinions and ideas, but if you as a community are building your event to have a variety of perspectives and a variety of skill sets that are all willing to come together and leave the egos at the door and say, we want to accomplish, insert broad picture, now how are we going to do that? And rather than saying no or setting up the obstacles, open up the conversation for how do we get to yes? And how do we look at things a little bit differently? Because as our communities evolve and change, we need to do exactly the same thing with them.
Yeah, I would say willingness to try and fail. You know, willingness to learn from failures and willingness to experiment, which I know is similar to what I was saying with the last question, but certainly, and I don't know that that's just, you know, within the state of Michigan per se, but I think that's a lot of places. I think sometimes there's a sort of an inhibition or a barrier there because we report to a board or we have to demonstrate our impact, and we don't want efforts or initiatives to fail. And I think, you know, that's a conversation happening all over in all industries right now, is be willing to try and fail, to learn from that and go back and try again. So I think that's a key piece of that.
And I would add to that, I would say, know what you know, but equally important, know what you don't know. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be hesitant to extend an olive branch. Don't feel that you need to reinvent the wheel. And again, not to keep beating the community drum, but just engage with the community. I mean, when I look at what we've done along the riverfront, we couldn't have done it without the numerous public and private partnerships that we've developed over the years. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are without them, without the community. So just you know, listen to the community, reach out to them. They're your friend. Well, sometimes they're not, but more times than not, they are. And you know, ask questions.
Indeed, excellent. Well, I think we've got about 15 minutes here, and I think we've got some runners with mics positioned throughout the room here. So I'm wondering if there's questions in the audience that we could have our experts here on the panel address. I see one right over there.
This was a great panel. Thank you so much. I grew up about 20 miles outside of the nation's capital in Maryland. And one thing there is the big asset was the fact that Washington, D.C. was the nation's capital, and they took that as a big asset, and people around the world go there. And I'm not talking about a political thing at all. It's the history of the nation's capital. Well, here we sit in Lansing, Michigan, the state's capital, and I don't see us really taking that same asset, which is ours, whether we like it or not, and utilizing it or leveraging it in our marketing message. And how would you say, or what are some suggestions that we could maybe use the creatives in our community to put that on that key asset as a positive light for our local area?
Well, to start to answer your question, we should look at the fact that we are the state's capital as an asset. And when we talk about inclusivity up here, we have a whole state that we can involve to have conversations not just about Lansing, but the capital surrounding it, and bring folks in, bring expertise in, to lift up the entire state. Having conversations with some of the volunteer teams that I work with, it's like, how do we bring artists from around the state to the capital city and feature the fact that we are the capital city for the entire state, and taking that, just a different perspective from it.
Other questions out there in the room? Sorry, the light's bright. I see one right back there.
Yeah.
Mike, beautiful, thank you.
Yes, I was listening to one of the speakers earlier who mentioned several years ago when a community was being developed and architects and civil engineers were thinking about the direction they were going to go. They wiped out a whole community by laying the path of the highways. I'm wondering now, when communities are being developed, is there a 5-year business plan that's looked at? And I wonder if artists or creative people are in the room now, because as it was mentioned earlier, do we start at schools to begin changing ideology and begin people thinking about, you know, the different faces in the community, or do we start in a boardroom? If we start in a boardroom, you really need the artists or the creative thinkers at the table with the politicians, with the civil engineers, with the architects, and whoever is part of the development of that community, whether it's a particular residential area within the community or the community as a whole. So I just wonder, for those of you who are part of chambers of commerces and those kinds of things, are there artists or creative thinkers in the room now?
Chris, you kind of spoke to that a little bit earlier about kind of working with the chamber and in some cases kind of holding the chamber accountable to some of those pledges. Would you be willing to speak a little bit more about how do we ensure that creatives are in the room when some of those decision-making processes are happening?
Yeah, so part of what we have with the chamber, when they were awarded the funds to help build out this component, one of the requirements was they had to have a council made up of creatives. So that was off top, that was a part of the initiative from the very beginning. They had to have a council made up of creatives to help drive the initiative. So the council that we have are all made up with creative leaders in our community from different organizations or independents or those who work in some capacity of creativity or with creatives. So that was first and foremost. But that for us, I mean, I can only speak from that part of Grand Rapids really, that's been a big part of it for us to help drive that initiative. And that was a 3-year commitment for us to drive it forward. And then at the end of 3 years, they'll renew it most likely to continue the work that we've started as long as everything aligns based on the goals that we've set. Hope that answers your question.
Hi, I have a question.
Beautiful, awesome. I can't see you, but awesome. Thank you.
Heather from Flint. We are starting a placemaking initiative and are currently in the hiring process to find a director. And I was just wondering if you could speak to your professional experience or your education, what has prepared you best to date to do the work that you're doing?
Good question.
That's a great question.
Who
Want
wants
us to go
tackle
down the
that first?
line?
Well, I'm the director of communications, and I went to school. I went to Western. Any Broncos out there? The Broncos? Oh, okay. One. That's okay. 2.
I got you.
All right. All right, so I'm floundering up here. I went to school for public relations, and I've had a number of jobs throughout the years leading up to this point, and it's always been public relations. One thing that was interesting in another life, when I was doing the automotive thing, we had worked at a company and we had 100 people, 120 people who worked at the company, and most of them had college degrees. They did a survey to find out, you know, this is a communications firm, how many people have communications type degrees, and I think there are like 2 or 3 people. out of the entire company that had degrees that were in journalism or public relations or communications or whatever. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but I mean, that was my background and this is all that I've ever done. I think that if you have the right person with the right passion, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with predicator of success, what their degree may be in and what their experience may be in. It's just a matter of passion and the ability and wanting to get stuff done.
Yeah, I would agree too that the degree doesn't necessarily matter. My degree is in advertising and PR, and I've gone through transportation to then working with downtowns. Definitely not the traditional path, but it is more about the experience and the individual's ability to interact with others. If they aren't comfortable in a social aspect or aren't comfortable having conversations with a variety of different, again, leaders, artists, business owners, etc., then they might not be the right person. Look at that experience and you're going to learn so much just by having a conversation with them about that experience.
I'll add to that and say, I took the different route. I'm a college dropout. I dropped out of college after 6 months and still went on to have success in my career and built a great career, and I own a couple of businesses now. And my wife is actually from Flint and she's a college graduate. So we're living these two separate worlds as far as education goes, but we both have had success in our individual lanes. And so for me, what I think would be important to look for in that position is, it's not necessarily about the degree per se, it's more about where that person's heart at, and do they have a passion for the work, and can they be a student at times? I mean, yes, they're in a position of leadership, but also sometimes it's important to be a student and be able to take the constructive criticism of those on your team when you're there to work as a team. So I think, I mean, we can go on and on and on this topic of employment and hiring, but I think those are just a few of the smaller things that I'd be looking at.
So I can talk a little bit about my background, and then maybe to add to this, I could say, you know, if you're interested in getting into placemaking, this is what you might want to consider. But I got a master's in public administration at NYU, and some of that was planning focused. I certainly had a cohort of wonderful colleagues who did specifically urban planning. So I feel like that's kind of a natural pathway into the space of placemaking if you're looking to pursue education. So I would say that. I would also say, I don't know if this initiative is going to include any kind of 501c3, but it's always good to have some sort of background in nonprofit management and understanding the ins and outs of running and operating a nonprofit organization. And then I think I would just reiterate the ability to talk to different members of the community, different stakeholders. I think specifically building consensus among diverse stakeholders is important in a role like that, because people are going to have so many different ideas about how to approach something, and so to be able to facilitate and explore those conversations in a way that brings everybody together around, you know, a pathway forward, I think is a good skill to have for something like this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just think back to, you know, I'm so glad, Christy, to talk about the creatives, because you know, working with entrepreneurship at Michigan State, I get to work with students every day that are entrepreneurial, innovative, trying to start companies in some cases. And it's clear to me now that being creative or trying to start a venture, take it to market, solve world problems, transcends discipline, industry, and your academic major, right? And whether or not you have a degree or not. I have students at MSU that think about dropping out because they're like, wait a second, I can go to school so that I can employ others and not be employed, right? And so it transcends industry, and I think it's so critical to think about that, about how do we make the places accessible, welcoming, and appealing to all. I think about my background. I have some friends and colleagues in the room that when I say this, they're just gonna laugh, but as a junior going into my days at Western Michigan, I was an orientation leader for new student orientation. And so for a month, I walked students around campus to acclimate them to campus, and in my way, to get them inspired to be a Bronco. I couldn't wait for them to just fall in love with that place. And in many ways, I think I'm just always an orientation leader for the rest of my life. And it's a terrible analogy, but it's so true. And I remember as an orientation leader in college, we had backpacks, like our uniform, and we had first aid kit and information about all the academic majors and all the things, all the assets of our place, which of course was Western at that point. But I do that now. I'm always trying to, have you been to the Groovy Donuts yet? Because you really need to, because the maple bacon donuts are delicious, right? I just think that, you know, it's so neat to see that we have so many different backgrounds up here, because you can be involved in creative placemaking no matter your background discipline. It transcends all of that. More questions in the audience. We got time for probably one or two more. Right over here.
Hi.
Here.
That your image of orientation, would you say orientation?
Leader.
Leader, yes, thank you. How do we then, as creatives, you know, kind of participate as orientation leaders in general, you know? So my creativity and my placemaking nowadays converges around like making space for LGBTQ folk, and like where it literally becomes, you know, creating space for folk who don't have a space to exist even, and how many of our creativity is like rooted in survival and it's undergirded by resilience. So I guess my bigger question is, you know, like I know we talk about, you know, not needing particular backgrounds or education and whatnot, but then when we show up to these events and stuff, that's kind of like the same people who are ever showing up. It's like people want to keep talking about inclusion and whatnot, which is important and great. I'm not at all kind of diminishing that, but I guess my question is like, what are some tangible ways that we can start, I guess, living, not just, you know, trying to talk about inclusivity and, you know, some like, you know, marketing friendly phrases, and maybe even like moving beyond inclusivity, which really kind of is like dipped in like assimilation, which requires some of us to like leave part of our identities at the door just so we can like operate in spaces, but like maybe to move toward like an expansive creative space where we can actually bring all of who we are and still have access in the ways that we're trying to like open it up.
Great question. Thank you for that question. Any of our panelists want to speak?
I can take a first response at that. I love that, and I think yes, yes, and yes. Let's not just have conversations about inclusivity, but let's actually do it and make it happen, and that's not easy. I think for us as an organization, this has definitely been, you know, a forefront topic in the last year or so. It was part of the impetus for us creating these leadership coalitions because we felt like there weren't diverse voices represented in our leadership, you know, on the basis of race, gender, orientation, age, you know, socioeconomic status, all of those areas. So I think the one thing that I know we feel strongly about as an organization going into this conversation is that we can't answer that question. So our first act, so talking about specifically how do you market to marginalized populations, for example, to folks who we know by just way of anecdotes in the community don't feel welcome or comfortable in our downtown space. So I can't answer that question, but the way we're trying to do that is to go to organizations and community members that represent those populations, bring that lived experience to the table, and ask them, how do we do this? Help us do this in a better way. And so it's been really great. It's anything from, we have these, I'm not kidding you, we have these electronic dancing elves that have been this staple of our holiday decorations for like decades now in Kalamazoo. And somebody brought up the point that all of these elves are white males. So let's create elves that actually represent the diversity of the community. Let's create female elves. Let's create black elves, Asian elves. So that should represent the community we serve. So it's coming in and even the small details that, again, you don't always think about. But I think if you have that lived experience, you know that and have a different perspective. So I would give that as an example. That's how we're really trying to tap into to folks that have experienced that and learn from their experience and incorporate that into the way we operate in all of our programming and services.
I think I've got like a blinking light up here. Do I have time for one more question?
I have a question.
Yep, right over there.
Hi, my name is Amalia Scorsoni, and I'm a senior at DeWitt High School. As people who push for placemaking in cities and making them places that people want to study, work, and live, if you put yourself in the shoes of today's students, how would you change the K-12 system to incorporate the ideas you discussed earlier? Because unfortunately, many students are unmotivated and feel like they are only providing data when they could be providing talent. We currently lack the resources for students to reach their creative potential. So I ask you, what would you do?
Good question. Thank you for that. Analysts?
I didn't catch all the questions, parts of it.
It's basically helping high school students feel like they have more of a voice and involved.
Yeah, so if I could repeat the question, it was essentially asking how do we make sure that we're providing resources for high school students in K through 12 to be involved and a part of this process? Is that accurate? Okay, excellent. Yes.
I know, short answer for me is that we are always looking for interns, spring, summer, fall interns, whether they're college students or high school students along the riverfront, to give them hands-on experience in placemaking in a transformative project.
Something I've seen in other communities is they have like a youth advisory team, and it's specifically working with whether it's one high school or a whole network of high schools, and the students there to get that connectivity and get those conversations going. I know in some cities they struggle with where that meeting spot is it during the school day, is it not? So if there are students at your school who are looking to have more of that voice and feel like they're invited to the table, if you will, start talking to your teachers, get to the principal level and find out who in your community is going to be that advocate and include you in those conversations.
For us, excuse me, for us in Grand Rapids, we have a program called LEAD. It's an initiative that started about 9 years ago through our city hall, where the city wanted to find 50 businesses that would agree to hire young people, teens to young adults in college. And that has since grown to now called the Mayor's 100, where we have 100 companies that agree to hire people. And the city pays half the wages, the business pays the other half. And so my role in that is I have been the keynote speaker for every single LEAD cohort that they've had since inception. I've done every single one of those groups and cohorts. And I also am partly responsible for bringing in some of the businesses that eventually will then help those students through internships. And part of those are creative businesses. So it's an opportunity to expose young people to entrepreneurship in a creative space, but also in a traditional space of manufacturing or whatever they prefer. So they get a chance to see both worlds. So that's one way that students can get involved is, like she said, finding access, by way through the schools, and then being connected to organizations that already focus on youth development or youth employment, and allowing those to become the avenues to take you into entrepreneurship or whatever you're after.
Yeah, I think we have volunteers from at the both high school and university level, so I think the specific question was K through 12, but I know that we do ask for volunteers from both of those groups during certain events in downtown Kalamazoo. We also have a few university students on our coalitions, so that has been fantastic, again, because I think it represents a specific perspective that's important to be at the table. But I think I would just encourage, if you're in that space or K through 12 or know someone who is, I think organizations like ours are willing to engage if people are interested in contributing and engaging. So just figuring out who to contact, how to do that, and figuring out a space where you might be able to contribute.
If I could add one more thing to that. What you've heard today is a lot of conversation from creatives in this industry, and those of us that are at the top of this ladder, I guess you could say, as far as being a voice for creatives. We don't have all the answers, and some of your questions may not have been answered the way that you would have liked. And even with the question, like with the answer she just gave, she's telling you this is what we do, I just gave you this is what we do. So if you didn't hear your answer as an entrepreneur and as a creative, maybe that's the sign for you to create that next thing. Maybe you create the next thing. You're creating that next thing that you did hear up here today. And she was very clear. She says, we're open to engagement. We're open to ideas and partnerships. And I think all of us are probably in the same boat. So that's an opportunity for you to find the problem that you see in our communities, create the solution for it, and then you have access to those of us who have the relationships and the networks that you need to make it come to life. You not just have to do the work and bring it to the table.
Like you said, being orientation. director or whatever.
There you go.
You can call us resource wranglers, right? And there's a whole network in this room of resource wranglers, of people who know different organizations or individuals who have maybe not the one answer you want, but know somebody who does.
Yes.
And can help direct you that way.
That's right. Well, friends, I think our time is officially up. But Jennifer, Chris, Kathleen, Mark, thank you so much for devoting your time with us this afternoon and sharing your perspective. Really, really appreciate it. And if you could all join me, crowd, in thanking them. I think we're all set. Thank you all.
LAFCU was started in 1936, so we've been in the community for a really long time. And the credit union philosophy is always about people helping people in the community. And so we've done just that, throughout the years. But we were faced with a couple challenges. The first challenge, it came in 2015. So prior to 2015, we were known as Lansing Automakers Federal Credit Union. And with that, we were federally chartered, which meant that we could serve individuals throughout certain counties in the state of Michigan. Well, when we got to 2015, we became state chartered. So that meant we could serve individuals throughout the whole state of Michigan, which was wonderful that we could do that, but it gave us a challenge with our name. We had to rebrand our name out in the community because people knew us as our old, Lansing Automakers Federal Credit Union name. And so in 2015, we ran a campaign that was called LAFCU, down to the letter. And with that, there was a commercial that was done. It included about 13 LAFCU employees, and these larger-than-life LAFCU letters were built out of a thicker foam core, but they spanned 6 feet tall by 35 feet wide, and so larger-than-life letters, And these letters were taken throughout different venues in the community that we would go to throughout that year. And it worked out really good. People began to know us as our name. But the challenge that came up a year later was that these letters are out there in the community, but we really wanted people to get the chance to engage with the letters, to really connect with us, to bring light to the letters in a different way. And so we started thinking of different ideas, and the idea of having 5 artists come in and paint on these LAFCU letters came to light. And so in 2016, 5 artists, we put an artist calling out, and 5 artists came together basically in one night, and they brought these LAFCU letters to life. It was amazing to watch how the work developed throughout that time period. And these letters have traveled to, again, a lot of different venues. And we did that again this year. This year we had 5 artists again, and those artists were painted by, the L was painted by Nevin Spearbacher, the A was painted by Brian Whitfield, the F was painted by Azalea Miller, the C by Ariana Marino, and the U by Sophia Perez. And they all did a wonderful job. I don't know if any of the artists are here still. I know a couple, Brian and Nevin, were here earlier today, but if you are, wave your hand. Give you a shout out. There you are. So they did wonderful work. And these have traveled to different places, such as the concert series that has taken place right outside the Lansing Center here. We've had the Harmony Festival, the Feldeni Armory Fete, and just a lot of other places that they will travel to. They really have served as a traveling art exhibit. This last one was titled the LAFCU Serve Series, which encompassed product, community, and our statewide membership. And it's been just a wonderful project, really, to connect people, connect the community, connect the artists, and really give the artists a platform, a space to really showcase their work, their amazing work. Because, and at the time when we had this project in place, we didn't know, with any new project, you don't know what's going to happen because you've never done it before. But you take that chance and you take that risk in hopes that it turns out great. And it really has made a difference. So in light of making a difference, I want to thank you for letting us share our story with you today. But making a difference is what this next individual does really well. And he's a well-known author, and he is known for bridging the gap between people and bringing people together and connecting them. And it's really all about inclusion and making a difference. So if you can put your hands together for True Pettigrew, he's your keynote speaker. Thank you.
Hello. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Microphone, there we go. Is this thing on? Huh? Can y'all hear me? Huh? How's everybody doing? Come on, how's everybody doing? I know it's been a long day. My name is True Pettigrew. I am very excited to be here. I'm going to do my best to make these next 2 hours go really fast. All right? No, I'm kidding. Look, I know it's the end of the session, and we are all thinking about this after party, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. I am very excited to be here. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to sit through all of the other presentations. And so, Megan, and to all of those of you who are on the council, on the committee, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Can we give them a hand again? And while we're clapping for all of the speakers and panelists that grace this stage today, let's give them another round of applause. Thank you all. Thank you all. And so I'm going to talk to you today about the art of inclusion. And I just want to give you a little background on who I am, True Pettigrew. And what you see on the screen, those are my sources of inspiration for what I do. My lovely wife of 17 years, Tamika, and our amazing young prince, Austin, who's 7 years old. And that is really the source of inspiration for me for all that I do. We live in Cary, North Carolina. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Cary, What? Come on, get out of here. What you know about Cary? Huh? Oh, all right, just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. We moved there from Boston. I am originally from Baltimore. My wife is originally from Brooklyn, New York. And my professional career prior to starting True Access, which is a consultancy that helps organizations bridge gaps across racial divides, cultural divides, generational divides, and relational divides of all kinds. Prior to that, I was in advertising for 20 years. And so I worked with organizations, my clients, helping them to connect with young adult and multicultural audiences. All right, and that plays a role in what I do today, but at the time when I was doing that, had no idea that would be the case. So as we're going to talk about building bridges across divides today, I want to start off with this quick stat of the Great Divide. And there's a study that says 75% of Americans say that our inability to have civil discourse has reached a crisis level, a level of crisis. Would you all agree with that our ability to just have civil discourse with one another has reached a crisis level? New York Times recently released an article that cited another information source that says America is the most divided it has been since the Civil War, right? So we have some bridge building to do as a nation. And so as we start to talk about this, all right, I want to share some things with you. Before we get started, or since I've already started, I do want to kind of establish some agreements, some ground rules. I'm going to share with you all this afternoon. I expect you all to, I'm going to involve you and include you in this conversation. We're going to figure this thing out together. So as I share some things with you about me, I'm going to be very open, honest, transparent, and vulnerable with you all. Right? So the only thing that I ask Can we be one big happy family today? Yes? Yes? And so, all right. I appreciate that. I feel that love. Now, here's the next part. No judgment. No judgment? Because I'm gonna share with you all. No judgment? Can we agree with that? Huh? Yes? Sir? Is that, I can't see you. Yeah. Is that it? Yes, you will judge, or no, you will? Okay, all right. So, okay, got you. All right, so no judgment. So we're gonna share some things with each other today. But I wanna start off, if we're gonna talk about diversity and inclusion, and we've been hearing a lot about that today. Let's start off with defining diversity. Let's define diversity. Who out here wants to define diversity for us? Do we have to, I know we're not at the Q&A yet, so if the mic runners aren't out there and available, you can just speak loudly, because I want to engage you. I want us to do this together, take this journey together. Who wants to define diversity for us? Let's define diversity. And there's got to be one bold soul out there. We've been talking about it all day. You live it. You all have been applauding for it, talking about it, recommending it, commanding and demanding diversity. So you have to have some idea of how you define diversity. Who wants to define diversity for us? Yes, ma'am. There's a microphone for you.
Oh, snap, okay.
Educate us, come on, let's go.
Diversity would be it a company or a city that has voices from every subsect of life, be it socioeconomic, race, culture, ability, like a disability, to do things to improve it or have a say.
All right, I like that. Come on, let's encourage her. Thank you for that. One more, who else? Diversity, one more, come on. I'm not going to do all the talking today. I just want you all to know that, right? We're going to do this thing together. Yes, sir.
Diversity means that that everything's not all the same.
That's it. Right? Very simple. That's right. Y'all can clap for that. Now, by definition, right, if you look it up, and I don't always go with the definitions that I find on dictionary.com or Webster or whatever source you use, diversity, by definition, is the state of being different. That's how it's defined. So absolutely, you both are absolutely right. Diversity is the state of being different, whatever that difference is. Now, what I found very interesting about the definition of diversity when I looked it up is diversity is a state of being, which means it does not do anything. It's static. Diversity is a state of being. There is tremendous amounts of diversity in this room right now that is available to us all. There is tremendous amounts of diversity right now that we can all experience. But diversity by itself does not do anything. What should always go with diversity? Just yell it out. Action, all right? Equity, I heard equity, action, what else? Perception, inclusion, bam, it's the answer I was looking for. Inclusion. Diversity and, it's a whole industry, right? Diversity and inclusion. They should always go together, but too often, many of us stop at diversity. We don't go beyond diversity to inclusion. Inclusion is defined as the act, someone said action, right? Inclusion is the act of making someone or something a part of. That's the action. So the diversity, the gift of diversity that is available to all of us requires us to leverage it through our actions, through being inclusive, to benefit from the gift of diversity that is available to us. We have tremendous amounts of diversity available to us, but we don't leverage it and take advantage of it because we aren't as inclusive as we could be or should be. Why is that? Why aren't we as inclusive as we could be or as we should be? Why is that? This unconscious bias, right? Why else? Why aren't we as inclusive as we could be or should be? Fear. Oh, you guys are good. Fear, power, unconscious bias, right? What is it? Fear of change. Don't know what we don't know, right? Fear of losing your power. All of those things, the top reasons we aren't as inclusive as we could be or as we should be: fear, confusion, control, and resentment, right? And control directly related to power. We're afraid that we're going to lose something. We're afraid that we may say or do the wrong thing and offend someone, right? Might get us in trouble. Confusion. We want to be more inclusive of others, but we just don't quite, we don't quite know how to go about doing that, right? And then there's this notion of control, right? We want to maintain this sense of power, this perceived level of control or power that we have, because when we're inclusive of others, it requires a certain level of vulnerability. Because we have to acknowledge, you know what, I don't know everything. And if I have this position of power, I want to maintain that perception. So I don't want to allow myself to be vulnerable because I think that gives off a perception of weakness. But there's power in your vulnerability. And then even the resentment. For those of us that are part of historically marginalized communities, whether that be people of color, whether that be women, LGBTQ plus community, there is this certain level of resentment oftentimes that we showcase. If there is someone from the dominant majority, someone that's white, that wants to reach out and be an advocate or be an ally, but now we give them this air of resentment because we feel like they're presenting this notion of the great white hope, right? Or we have this pain that we haven't overcome because of some past experiences. So those are the things that we have to overcome in order to be more inclusive, right? And so this is what gets us to the art of inclusion. So the way that I look at the relationship between diversity and inclusion, I'll just tell you this quick analogy, at least for me. And I'm probably older than most of you as I look out in the room, right? And so I remember growing up and wanting certain things for Christmas as I grew up. You know, I was the youngest of 6. My mom did an amazing job raising all of us. And so I would always want something. I would want the game Operation. I would want Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I would want G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip and like all of these different things. You guys, y'all don't remember none of that stuff, do you, right? Y'all don't remember none of that stuff. Like Evel Knievel, anybody? Nobody? Yeah? Huh? Yeah? Okay, all right. So I remember wanting these different gifts for Christmas. And I would wake up in the morning and I was like, oh, I hope mom's got the gift. I hope she got the gift. You know, I wake up, I go running downstairs and I look under the tree and I see something with my name on it. And I rip it open and be like, yes, mama came through. Yes, mom came through. So I'm ready to enjoy the gift that mom got me. And I go to play with the gift and oh, what happened? Who said that? I grew to hate those 3 words. Batteries not included. What? What? Come on now. So I was the youngest of 6, so eventually mom would send one of my older siblings out, go to a convenience store that was open, get some batteries, come back now, I can enjoy the gift, right? And so that's the way I look at diversity and inclusion. Diversity is a gift that is available to us all. Inclusion is the battery that powers that gift so that we can enjoy the gift of diversity. And so how I discovered or learned the art of inclusion, and I'll share this quick story with you. The gentleman that you see in this picture with me is the recently retired police chief of Cary, North Carolina, Chief Tony Godwin. And Tony is one of my absolute closest and best friends on the planet today. Now, had you told me that would be the case 7 years ago, I would not have believed you. Tony just retired January of this year, but we met in 2014, August of 2014. And over that time, he's become one of my closest friends in the world. Now, the reason I would not have believed you 7 years ago is because of how I felt about law enforcement. So if you would have told me one of my best friends on the planet would be a white, male police chief from the South? What? Stop playing. So, just by way of background, I grew up in Baltimore. I grew up in West Baltimore. And so growing up in West Baltimore, where I grew up, was not ideal conditions. Definitely saw and experienced some things that I don't think any child should see or experience. But we normalized that where and how I grew up, right? And a part of that experience growing up was being on the receiving end of excessive force by the Baltimore City Police Department. And so not just me and my friends, and we normalized that behavior. And so that started to form my perception of law enforcement, particularly white male police officers. And so fast forward, living in LA, I went to school, graduated, moved to LA. And I told y'all it was no judgment, right? So after I graduated, I had a degree in electrical engineering, I moved to LA to be a rapper, y'all, like for real. Where's my judgmental? You judging me, bro? He's like, yes, I am. No, but I had bars, bro. I had bars, like for real. That's why, had some success in doing that in the entertainment industry, and then happened into advertising and did that for 20 years. But while I was living in LA, I was on the receiving end of some excessive force by the LAPD. And this one particular incident really stood out and continues to stand out in my life. And that really conditioned me to see members of law enforcement a certain way. I lived in the Crenshaw district, and I was coming out of a 7-Eleven one day, and a bunch of police cars are pulling up fast and furious as I'm coming out of the 7-Eleven, and they're coming in hot, like, skirt, skirt, skirt. And so I'm taking a step back. Clearly something's happening, and I'm taking a step back. I had a gallon of milk in the plastic bag, and I'm trying to see what's going on. Officers all jump out of the car. This one officer in particular, he grabs me, he throws me to the ground, like bag of milk goes flying. He's got his knee in my back. My face is pressed against the parking lot. He'd drawn his weapon, his service weapon out, pressed against the side of my head. His very first words to me, at this point, I have no idea why this is happening. His very first words to me were, "Give me a reason, I wish you would." So ladies and gentlemen, I believe had I coughed, sneezed, laughed, anything, I may not be standing before you today. And I had no idea why this was happening. He ended up apprehending me, taking me down to the station, and thank goodness it was a case of mistaken identity, and I'm so grateful they actually caught the guy. Some guy had recently robbed a 7-Eleven nearby, and apparently I fit the description. So upon my release, the officer, I still had my Maryland driver's license because I had recently moved there from Baltimore. So I still had my Maryland driver's license, and this officer tosses my license to me on the table, and he says to me, "Hey, this isn't Be More. You need to get out of here now. Be more careful." So I guess that was his form of an apology or an attempt to be clever. I'm not sure. But that drove the way that I viewed police officers for all of my adult life, quite honestly, based on my experiences growing up in Baltimore, that experience in LA. For all of my adult life, I did not like, nor did I trust members of law enforcement, particularly white male police officers. Didn't do anything to them, but if I ever saw them, I just went the other way. Didn't want to have anything to do with them. And so now you fast forward to August of 2014. And this is August 9th of 2014, to be specific. It was a Saturday. And I don't know if any of you remember what happened August 9th, 2014. Ferguson. Officer Darren Wilson killed Michael Brown in Ferguson. And it affected me in a way that it was really hard for me to articulate at the time. And it affected our entire nation. It changed the way law enforcement polices with new community policing initiatives and 21st century policing efforts. And I realize now it affected me in a very different way than I could really articulate. It was because of untreated trauma that I had experienced. And that was a trigger. When I saw that images, now you have to remember, we had seen a number of things at that point on our TV screens, on our social media screens. But when I saw that, it triggered me in a different way. And I know now it's because I had a son at that point. My son was 2 years old in August of 2014, right? Austin. And so I knew I had to do something because I did not want my son to be the next hashtag on my social media feed. And what I saw was not just images of something happening far away. I realized that this could really happen because similar events had actually happened to me. And I felt like, wow, I have to protect my son from something like this happening to him. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And so that following Wednesday, which is now August 13th, 2014, I went to my local barbershop. And I have a standing appointment every Wednesday. I know some of you are looking at me like, but True, you don't have any hair. Yeah, you're like, ah. I go to the barbershop every Wednesday, and this particular day, has anyone in here ever been to a black barbershop? Anybody? Anybody? Come on, put it, let me see. It's hard to see you. Okay, couple of you. Well, let me just explain to you. You talk about anything and everything in the black barbershop, all right? Nothing is off limits. You talk about sports, you talk about relationships, you talk about politics, you talk about anything and everything in the black barbershop. You can get some of the best and worst relationship advice in the barbershop. So fellas, just be discerning if you happen to be there on one of those relationship days. So this particular day, they were talking about Ferguson because it had just recently happened. So they're already talking about it, and my emotions are already running high. So I'm feeling some type of way about what had just happened. And so I jump into the conversation head first. Right? So they're talking about it, and so I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? And another thing, and this is the problem with the police. And let me tell you about the Cary police. Because they want to protect and serve their white citizens. But they want to police the black citizens. They probably don't even live in the community. This could happen to you, and I happen to know you're an entrepreneur. I know that you're a lawyer, you're a teacher. They don't care. This could happen to any of us, our children, and I'm going on and on. And what you need to know about Cary is a predominantly white and relatively affluent community. My Caryan can attest to that, right? And so I'm going on and on. And have you ever been in one of those moments and situations where you're just talking and you're going off, and the next thing you know, everybody's listening to you, and I'm just like, now I'm holding court, and I'm just going, and everybody else in the barbershop has stopped talking, and everybody's listening to me. And so now that's one of those moments where you feel compelled to say something significant, right? Just like, all eyes on me. I gotta say something good. And so my mind, that can be a very dangerous place, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you. So I'm like, all right, I've got to say, everybody's listening to me, and I'm just kind of rambling. I've got to say something significant. And so next thing came out of my mouth, it changed my life. I said, you know what? I've got a good mind to go down to the Cary Police Department tomorrow and give them a piece of my mind. This is no longer going to happen. I'm going to put a stop to this. This will no longer happen on my watch. That's right. That's right. And that's what they was like, yeah, True, you the man. And you just the one to do it. Go down there, let them have it, son. Let them have it. Yeah, True. And I got excited. I got fired up, like my chest poked out. I just stormed. I was like, yeah, I'm going down there tomorrow. I'm going to let them have it. Man, I left the barbershop. I didn't even get my hair cut. I was so excited. I left the barbershop. So I hopped into my car, and I'm going home. I get home, my wife's home, and I'm still feeling excited. I'm energetic. And I'm like, hey, babe, I was just at the barbershop, and they were talking about Ferguson. You know how I feel about Ferguson. And they were talking about Ferguson. So, babe, guess what? I let them know what I'm going to do. Everybody got fired up. They rallied around me. I'm going down to the Cary PD tomorrow and give them a piece of my mind. My wife said, no, you're not. I said, but babe, you don't know, my wife, beautiful woman, she loves me, smart woman, I know she loves me. I said, but babe, you don't understand, like I told the fellas at the barbershop that I was gonna do this. Like if I don't do this, like babe, I sold tickets, all right, basically, like if I don't do this, I can't go back to the barbershop. This is why I love her. She said, all right, tell you what, I'm gonna go to Sally's, I'm gonna buy some clippers, I'll start cutting your hair, and you never have to go to the barbershop again. And so I said, all right, babe, all right. Now this is where I need no judgment, and I need just take a moment. I need some affirmation or some validation or some confirmation of some sort from the gentleman in the room. I said, all right, babe. Fellas, does that mean that I agree with what you said? Or does that mean I heard what you said? Right? Anybody? Subject to interpretation. I heard. Like that's what I heard what you said. That does not mean that we are actually in agreement. You know, that all right, babe, is like, I ended up, it led to trouble. So needless to say, the next day, I hop in my car. I go down to the Cary Police Department. I pull up, and I had to Google it. I'd never been. I didn't even know where. There's no signs in Cary, right? There are no signs for anything in Cary if you ever go, right? So I hop in my car, Google it. I go down there. I pull up to the parking lot, get in the parking lot, sitting there for a second, got my nerves together, hop out. I storm across that parking lot, get to the front door, get right to the front door, bam, kick the front door open. I'm standing in the middle of the lobby. I need to speak to someone. I need to speak to someone right now because I know y'all see what's going on across the nation, and I'm tired of it. It's unacceptable. It's irresponsible. It's inappropriate, and we're going to put a stop to it right now. That's right, Megan, I'm a bad man. Little lady behind the desk says, excuse me, sir, calm down, calm down. No, I'm not calming down until I speak to someone. She left. It's like, all right, I'm handling my business. She came back. She was not alone. She came back with Sergeant Jeremy Bergen. Now, JB is a lieutenant now, but at the time, he was the sergeant over community services, which is why she went to get JB. JB, as I affectionately refer to him now. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the biggest, whitest police officer I'd ever seen in my life. I'm not even kidding you. JB is every bit of 6'6", 260. And all I could do is I looked up at this dude, all I could think was, I should have listened to my wife. He's like, sir, can I help you, sir? I was like, yeah, like, you watching the news? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the country, and I'm sure you saw it, I saw it, and there's some people in the community that's concerned about what's happening, and we just want to know if it's, how you feel about it. And so he's like, all right, well, come on back to my office. So we go back to his office, and we sit and we have a conversation. And this is where the beginning of the lessons for me on the art of inclusion. The exchange that I had with JB in that moment, it literally changed the trajectory of my life. It has led to me doing what I do as a community bridge builder, because the lessons that I learned from JB in that exchange, and I don't even think it was intentional, it was just him being who he is. JB did some things in that meeting, in that exchange, and I adopted some principles that I apply to this very day in the work that I do in community bridge building. He heard me out. He listened to me. And when I was done, and I know at that moment I had a lot of angst and animus and fear and concerns that I was sharing with him. And I know now that a lot of the things that I shared were inaccurate, weren't right, were based on some false perceptions. But he heard me, and he let me finish. And when I was done, he said, I'm sorry that these things happened to you, and I understand how you feel and why you would feel the way that you feel. He said, but what can I do to change the way that you feel about the Cary PD and this profession overall? And then he challenged me. And he said, and what are some things that you think you and I could do together to change the hearts and minds of other people that feel and think the way that you feel and think? I was not ready for that. I was expecting him to be dismissive, condescending, defensive. I was not ready for that. What JB did in that exchange and the lessons that I apply and the principles that I apply to this day, and Covey talks about this, he listened to understand, not listening to reply, I think is what we often do that creates a barrier for us to be as inclusive as we could be, even when we put forth the efforts. Listen to understand, not listen to reply. That's competitive listening, and we often do competitive listening. When someone's sharing something, their life experience, their perspective, their worldview, if it doesn't align with ours, all we're doing is storing up information and ammunition to defend our position or point of view. That's competitive listening. We're not truly listening to understand that person's life experience or perspective. And the second thing that JB did is he sought first to understand before being understood. And it takes a lot of discipline and maturity, right? He heard me out first, and I know I said some things that probably rubbed him the wrong way, but he sought first to understand before being understood. And those are principles that I apply today, and I'm so grateful and thankful for JB. And those are principles that I would encourage you all to apply as a part of the art of inclusion, because it is an art and it's not a science. When we're seeking to be more inclusive, to overcome those barriers of fear, confusion, control, and resentment, it's an art to it. And like everything else, it comes with application and practice. So I will offer you this approach, if you will. Like, start with why, right? Understand why you are doing what you are doing, because it's a reason that's bigger than yourself. This was my why. I needed to create a safer environment, a healthier environment. I wanted a place where my son is growing up, if he does get into any trouble, in any sort of mischief that required the involvement of law enforcement, I wanted that exchange to be, oh, Austin, come on, man, you should know better. I'm calling your dad, because there is a familiarity with him. There is not any sort of fear, or those unconscious biases aren't kicking in, because once we can establish a sense of familiarity with others, taking the time to get to know others, that's what breaks down that fear. That's what breaks down that confusion, that control. Frequency breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds trust. Spending time with others, doing life together alongside others, because it's a heart condition, ladies and gentlemen, and I do trainings all over the world. And one of the things that I realize is you can have all the training in the world, but if your heart is not right, it doesn't matter, right? This transformational process is a heart condition. And when we do the implicit bias training, we do the equity training, we do diversity and inclusion training, I'm talking as an industry, we're often speaking to the head, but we don't help people understand how to connect the head with the heart. And so this is a heart condition. So understand why you are doing what you're doing. So this was my why, my love for my son. And then that drove me to walk down to that, or drive down to that police department that day. Now, all right, I have to share something with you guys. When I got down to the Cary PD that day, on that Thursday, August 14th, 2014, I didn't actually kick the front door in. But I did go down there. I did go. And if any of you ever visit the Cary PD, just a little footnote, the door actually pulls out, so I probably couldn't have kicked it in anyway. But I did go down there, and I did walk through those doors, and there was a lovely lady at the front desk, and I was like, excuse me, ma'am, I need to speak to someone about what's going on, and thank you for your service. I think you guys are doing a great job. And she's like, oh, well, what do you want, son? Speak up. I was like, well, I just need to speak to somebody about the community and concerns of the community. And so she got JB, and everything else happened the way that I said it happened, right? Just everything else happened the way that I said it happened. And so in response to JB's challenge, we started a Building Bridges initiative between myself and the Cary PD. And that led to the development of a diversity and inclusion training specific to law enforcement. And it's called Cohort, Community Organizers Helping Officers Restore Trust. And started delivering that training to the Cary PD. And as a part of that initiative, I invited the members of the Cary Police Department to join me at the barbershop. The very barbershop where I was talking trash about the police. I said, you know what? Let's have some conversation. Let's have some courageous conversation about why there is a lack of trust, why trust has eroded, why there are these differences of perspective between law enforcement and the black community. And this is a great place to hold those conversations because this is a trusted venue of the black community and encouraging members of law enforcement to meet the community where they are, right? And so they accepted that challenge. And we started having conversations in the barbershop. And the very first one we had in August of 2014 was very tense and extremely uncomfortable. But we didn't stop. We decided after that one, and this is a facilitated dialogue. I facilitated the conversation because I had gotten to know the members of law enforcement. And I knew the things that I was sharing with the men and women of the barbershop prior to that, I knew wasn't accurate. And so I had to own that. And so I wanted to create an opportunity to have some facilitated dialogue to build that familiarity. And so we started what we call barbershop rap sessions and these courageous conversations. First one was tough, but we didn't stop. So we agreed that we would have these sessions on the first Saturday of every month, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And what we started in August of 2014, we have continued to do that up to this day. We haven't missed a first Saturday in over 5 years. And it has changed. Thank you. And it has responded to that challenge that JB offered. It has changed the hearts and minds of men and women who felt a certain type of way about law enforcement. It has changed the culture of law enforcement. It has changed the culture, transformed the culture of an entire community where there is a level of trust, legitimacy, empathy, and understanding among all members of the community. Because what started off as an initiative to build trust between law enforcement and the black community, that first session had about 14 people in it. If you look at the image in this picture right here, there are over 70 people in that barbershop. That's on an average month, it's 70 plus people now consistently. And it's not just about law enforcement and the black community. If you look at that picture, there are people from all walks of life, right? Of all races, ethnicities, cultures, religions, and ages. Professors, students, high school teachers, judges, elected officials, professional athletes. Because as the word got out, everyone realized they all had a role to play in helping to make our community bigger, better, stronger, faster, and create a healthier climate of inclusion that benefits us all. So people just started attending, and now it's something that people look forward to. And so this was the how we were able to accomplish the art of inclusion and being more inclusive in our community. And the what was meaningful connection. Not just between Tony and I, that just represents an entire community. Because what that did, that transferred to us doing this in Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, Apex, Morrisville, Roanoke Rapids, Roxborough. Has now expanded to Baltimore, to places in Virginia, like places all over the country, to the point where the IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the governing body for law enforcement across the world, has now tapped into me to be one of their SMEs, subject matter experts, to travel around the world to facilitate these courageous conversations between law enforcement and the diverse communities that they serve, right? But, now, thank you. But it was rooted in a clarity of purpose of why. And so the process for this that I want to share with you all is understanding that we often want to start with what, right? We want to jump to the what. We want to use our hands to create, to do something, to create something. And I get it, right? But let's not jump straight to the hands, right? It starts in the heart. It goes from the heart to the head, then to the hands, right? The why, the how, and then the what. And that has been proven to be a very effective process for us. And so I've talked about the meaningful connection that Tony and I have, and that the transformation from the entire community, from law enforcement and other members of the community. But I want you to hear directly from some of the barbers that have participated in this program, so that you can hear directly from them how it has changed their hearts by them leveraging their trusted venues of the community as a place and a platform to build meaningful connections.
Tron Watson, Cary, North Carolina. The name of the shop is Headliners.
My name is Anthony Smith. Also, I'm in Cary, North Carolina, and the shop that I work at is also Headliners.
My name is Reggie Winston. I own the barbershop. It's located in Raleigh, North Carolina.
My name is George Brown. People call me Wiz. I own Exquisite Haircuts in Apex, North Carolina.
The barbershop rap session, it's one of those intimate experiences between police and the community that they serve. It's an opportunity for them to come together in a common area, the barbershop, where you can talk about anything, you can debate anything, you can argue anything.
It was definitely a change of pace from the norm. A lot of times whenever you interact with police officers, it's not tell us your grievances and we'll listen to you, you know.
I expected maybe 2 of the cops that was on desk duty and 2 or 3 of my clients would come in and we'll just kind of sit down and talk. I want to say 30 minutes before the session started, the entire parking lot was full of cop cars. Then you see the chief actually walk through the door. It made me feel like it's very important to them.
It does matter that the chiefs are involved so that the cops can be more involved, so the community will feel like leadership, ownership.
And everyone showed up in the attitude and the spirit to discuss concerns and try to solve some issues. And from there, relationships built. Like, I see the same officers all the time now.
We didn't want people to come in and bash cops. It's not a cop bashing session, it's an information session. It's for you to gain information from them as well as them gaining information from you. It lets me know who the cops were, because I've seen them patrolling the area, but once they came into the shop, it's like now we have a relationship. So to me, it's life-changing.
You know, actually seeing some of these people outside of their uniform, that relationship that we've built has made it comfortable for me to be able to say, well, you know, I do need your assistance with something. So I think this in the community can change. It can have a real good ripple effect.
A lot of people that won't necessarily trust cops trust barbers, and you wouldn't believe some of the things people come in and tell us. And if we tell them that, you know, this is all right, they'll take our word for it, and it'll be like a ripple effect.
And I had guys in my shop who hated every cop. But after that session, I like him. That one guy right there, he's cool. He's cool. But all the other ones, I don't know them. I don't rock with them. But that one guy turned to 2 guys, and then turned to 4 guys.
It takes both sides to be willing to make this thing work. If a cop don't want to come to the barbershop for a rap session, it ain't gonna work. If you don't want to build, if you don't want to grow, then no, it won't work for you. But if you want to grow, then barbershop rap sessions is what you need in your community.
You're not gonna get this type of conversation in church. You're not gonna get it at the school. You're not gonna get it anywhere else. If you're an officer and you just go to a random community and you just hop out and start talking to random black people,
it ain't gonna happen.
It's not gonna work.
You ain't got the handshake.
You don't have it. You have to meet us where we are and where we feel comfortable, and it's the barbershop, and we respect you for it.
But you need to have somebody in there that can keep everybody on task and on the subject matter, because it ain't nothing for somebody to be bring out one thing in the shop and somebody takes it and just runs off in the woods with it, and it never gets back on the path because it just brings up somebody start talking about something else and something else and something else.
Get involved. Do it. It's worth it. It's gonna make a difference. One barbershop can't do it alone. We're gonna coexist. We might as well do it peacefully.
Want it, get it, adapt it, take it.
it definitely changed me. It changed my views. It changed my outlook. It changed the way I talk to my kids. So without that being in place, we wouldn't have the man that you see before you today.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that represented 3 different municipalities in the Triangle area, in the Raleigh-Durham area, that has changed and transformed the hearts and minds of the men and women in those communities and the departments and agencies that protect and serve those communities. And because we were able to leverage the places in the communities that serve as trusted venues and utilize those as platforms for these courageous conversations for people to simply get to know others and having these courageous conversations. That exists in your community. That exists in all of our communities, to be able to break down those barriers and allow ourselves to have that frequency and familiarity that leads to trust. Because those differences exist. That opening slide of that division and that divisiveness exists. And the only way around it, and I've thought long and hard and tried so many different ways, but is having the uncomfortable conversation. Talking about differences is difficult. It's not easy. It makes most of us uncomfortable, particularly when you talk about race. It makes people uncomfortable. But it's like we all live over here in our comfort zones. The difficult conversation is this imaginary line right here in the middle. All of the resolution, reconciliation, and healing is over here. I wish I could tell you something different, but there is no avoiding the uncomfortable conversation that we need to have to get to the healing that we want to achieve, right? But it gets easier every time you do it. So I'll leave you with this 4-step meet model, because one of the most, I believe, strongest leadership attributes that goes under recognized is a leader's ability to meet people where they are. Not where we want them to be, not where we think they should be, but to meet them where they are. And so this 4-step meet model is the M is make time to engage. Not to be reactive, but to be proactive and make the time to engage. And engage. Outreach and engagement are 2 different things, and they both have their place. Continue to do outreach programs. But outreach is typically something you do for someone, where engagement is what you do with them. Make the time to engage. And that first E is explore similarities and differences. It's okay that we have differences. It's through our diversity, it's through our differences that we're able to be creative and innovative and ideate new thoughts, ideas, and solutions. That's the benefit, the gift of diversity that we talked about. We're going to have differences. Explore the similarities and the differences. Don't harp on the differences, because you'll also realize that there's so much more that unites us than separates us. Take the time to have those conversations. Make sure they are rooted in questions of genuine curiosity. They will be well received. And then that second E is encourage respect. Let's not be dismissive of other people's realities and experiences simply because they're not our own. If you may not have had the same experiences that I have had growing up. I may not have had the same experiences that you've had. But let's not be dismissive of other, like, your feelings are valid. Because I didn't experience it doesn't mean it's not real. And then the T is take responsibility. I'm sure every one of us in here wants to be a part of the solution when it comes to building a healthier and more inclusive culture and environment and community. But a part of that is taking a long, hard look in the mirror and saying to ourselves, hey, is there anything that I'm doing that could potentially be contributing to the problem? And for me, it was talking trash about law enforcement in that barbershop. I had to own that and take that responsibility. And these barbershop rap sessions were the solution that I was able to contribute once I owned my part in contributing to the problem. I was able to course correct. So the art of inclusion will result in this: greater employee or community or association engagement, improve productivity, and ultimately increase profitability. And however you measure your currency and profitability, whether that is culture, whether that is connection, whether that is creativity, however you are evaluating your currency, once you're able to apply the art of inclusion, it will increase. And so the process, again, is the assessment, know why, the application, know how, and the art is the what you will receive from that. And I always encourage people to start with why, because when we have clarity of purpose, it creates a VIP experience for everyone involved. It gives where you're going more value, that's your V. It gives what you do more impact, that's your I. And it gives how you do it more precision, that's your P. Clarity of purpose. And so here's some action steps. The slide before that was me challenging you to come up with specific action steps that you all can do starting today, the little things, to contribute to a more inclusive culture and community. But the action steps that I'll provide you to start with: meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. And then that next step is love people where they are. And you won't always love where they are, I get it. But love people where they are. And not this eros, emotion, feeling love. I'm talking agape love, a choice, a decision to be patient, to be kind, not to be self-serving. A choice to love people where they are. And if you do those two things, that will empower you to be able to effectively lead them where they need to go. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. And then in the spirit of inclusion, I've included my IG handle, my email, and my phone number. So if baby boomers, there's my phone number if you want to call me. Gen X, there's my email if you want to email. And millennials, there's my IG handle if you want to @me. Thank you very much. Now, I know we got off to a little bit of a late start, so I went through this as fast as I could. So I don't know if we still have time for questions or not. That's up to, we do? That's up to the boss table, right? This is the boss table right here, y'all.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we'll take a couple of questions if there are any questions.
Hi, my name is... There it goes. Are we on? I'll talk loudly. Thanks. Yeah, my name is Jessica. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how people of privilege or people with power can best take that first step. Because again, I think it would have been a different story if the police had stopped by the barbershop to say, let's talk.
It would have turned out very differently. And Tron, who was in that video, the shop owner of the one that we started doing those sessions, acknowledged that, all right? Because of the way that he had initially felt. All of those barbers that you saw, none of them liked or trusted police officers prior to this initiative, not a one of them. And that's another one of the things that continues to inspire and encourage me that the transformation is possible. It's about identifying community liaisons and cultural brokers. You know, like the barbershop is a trusted venue. It's about those people in power or people that are in positions of privilege to identify a cultural broker or a community liaison that wants the same thing that you want, wants to build that bridge and wants to bridge that gap, to lean on the third-party credibility of that individual to be able to usher you into those spaces.
What was the time frame between when you first met with JB until you had your first barbershop? And maybe what evolved during that time before you had the first meeting?
It was about 2 weeks, quite honestly. And it was me meeting with JB and JB introducing me to the chief and having conversations about what efforts they could do to do a better job of connecting with the African-American community. And one of the things that was recommended was going to the churches, partnering with, so there was a committee, if you will, of African-American pastors in the community that we pulled together. And then while we were pulling that together, I made the recommendation that, hey, look, if y'all are serious about this, I know a place where the people that feel, JB, you said, what can we do to change the hearts and minds of people that feel the way that I feel and think the way that I think? Let's understand why they feel that way. And so I made the recommendation that we go to the barbershop, and much to their credit, they accepted the invitation. And they will tell you there was some hesitancy for them to go into that venue because they knew chances were they were going to hear some things that were going to cut deep. But much to their credit, they accepted the challenge. And so it was probably not, no, it was too, because it was the end of August, and I think that happened right around the middle of August when I first met JB, kind of the second week in August. And then it was the end of August, we were in the barbershop. So a lot of conversation took place, and it's really what it is, and that to me, that's been the key of this. It can't stop at conversation, because a lot of initiatives have developed from those conversations, but it does need to start with a conversation.
Quick question. Great presentation, by the way, right here. Given the economic disparity between Cary and Baltimore, have you been able to go back to Baltimore and apply this model there, given that community?
Yeah, I have. We've done a couple of, and I don't live in Baltimore, and the answer is yes. I have been able to go back to Baltimore when Chief Melvin Russell was still in chief. He's recently retired, and apply this model. And so there are some efforts and initiatives that are still taking place. I'm from Baltimore, but I don't live in Baltimore, so what I do is I train moderators on how to facilitate these courageous conversations. And it really requires a commitment from all stakeholders and all parties involved. So it's having more success in certain places than it is in others. And so the answer is yes, and it can be replicated in any community as long as the people have the level of commitment and the right heart condition, and knowing that the key is the moderator. The moderator cannot have an agenda other than an agenda that's best for the greater good. It can't be a Blue Lives Matter, it can't be a Black Lives Matter, it can't be a political agenda. It has to be an agenda that's focused on what's best for the greater good of that community. And it needs to be someone that is vested in that community and from that community.
I love your why, so thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'm curious how you talk to Austin about the police in your community and also police in other communities. He's going to move away from home someday, all of that. So I wonder if you could speak to that, please.
No, absolutely. I'm very fortunate, and then I don't know if all of you in here are familiar with this notion of the talk. Is everyone familiar with the talk? Yes. Yeah. So for those who aren't, the talk is a conversation that most Black families have with their children as they're coming of age on how to survive encounters with law enforcement as they begin to leave the house outside of their parents' guidance. And so I am so fortunate that Austin is living the talk where members of law enforcement are a part of his daily life. And so he's getting that familiarity and understanding, and they aren't seeds of fear that are being planted in him about law enforcement. But I've still had the conversation with him to understand that because of how he looks, the color of his skin, that everyone in the world is going to view him differently and have different opinions of him. And as a part of that, we do a daily affirmation every day because I don't want that to have an adverse effect on his identity. So I affirm him every day, and we have our daily affirmation every day. We get together, we look in the mirror, we look at each other, you ready, you ready? We say, I am gifted, I am talented, I am loved. I will always lead with love because love never fails. I determine my attitude, and I'm determined to stay positive. My light will always shine, even in moments of darkness. I am gifted, I am talented, and I am loved. And so we do that daily affirmation every day so that although I've had to let him know that there are certain people in the world that may look at him differently, and some of those people may be police officers, everyone is but assume positive intent until given a reason otherwise.
Okay, over here. Hi. You said that you had to find community liaisons. What if you don't know how to find them? Where do you go to find these liaisons?
Well, they exist, and so I would just start to, here's the thing about the art of inclusion. Start talking with the people in your circle. I would imagine there's 6, 7 people at the table you're sitting at right now. I'm almost certain that if you started that conversation with the people at your table right now, somebody at that table is like, oh, you know what? There's this guy so-and-so, he might be a good, so start having that conversation with the people that you do know, the people that are in your circle, and including others, right? None of us can be or should be expected to figure this out in a vacuum, to figure this out alone, you know? Where there is little to no inclusion, there's going to be little to no commitment. But as you include more people in the process, they'll be as committed to the cause as you. And then those people exist, start asking around within your circle, and you'll find out who they are. And you'll find out a lot quicker than you probably think.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank True Pettigrew once again for his wisdom.
All right, I definitely got the last few minutes, and I'm happy to wrap this up with a nice little bow on it, but I guess it's more interesting for me to say thank you for taking some steps towards some difficult conversations when it comes to creative placemaking, and to actually opening all of our minds as to what's possible, and keeping creativity and artistry and the things that the Arts Council of Greater Lansing is really supportive of and hopeful for as we go forth and do our creative placemaking projects, and just being good community leaders and liaisons. So thank you. And thank you for True for coming and talking to us. So just, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to close out the day and just say that I'm really inspired by all of the conversations that I've had out and about in our networking areas and over lunch and all of these things. And I really hope that you did as well. It's something that we aspire to in all of the work that we do, to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table. And we're always welcome to have you at where you are, to go to where you are, or also come down and see us in Old Town Lansing and talk to any one of us that's really happy to help you with any of your projects. So this is the part in the program where we let you know that you are, if you were not already, a Lansing placemaker. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a community of people that have been growing list for the past 5 years, and I've been a part of that group and very proud to be a part of that group for the past 5 years, and I'm very thankful to have you in our group as well. I want to give a very warm thank you to Greg Verdnays, Botala, for providing us some amazing music throughout the day, as well as Lorenzo Lopez for the getting me up to dance, and to getting all of us up to dance and engaging in a fun activity. So I don't see any of these conversations stopping. I only see them going forward with forward momentum, as we were hopeful. So thank you so much for coming. I want to once again thank our 5-year sponsor, Greater Lansing Regional Prosperity Initiative, for believing in this concept, believing in this program, believing in this movement, and being a fantastic support for us. So please thank me one more time. Thank them one more time, Greater Lansing Regional Prosperity Initiative. We do have we already have the date in the books for next year, so please mark your calendars for October 14th of 2020. It will be the 6th annual Creative Placemaking Summit, so I hope you will join us once again. As a reminder, we do have one of the largest creative placemaking projects that we do, or that we help support, is the City of Lansing Arts Impact Project. It's a grant program that we facilitate for the City of Lansing, and it's $75,000 that could help you do a project in our community. I know some Art Impact Project recipients in the room, and I can say that they have transformed our cityscape. And all of that information is on our website under all of our grant programs, lansingarts.org. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.